For the applicant, if we looked at a different location, for me, I'd feel much better. But I think for me, the security concerns, the remoteness of that area, Sheriff, you may be able to make it better than 15 minutes, but I could call you, commit a crime, and be gone before you got there. And that's what worries me more than anything else. So I think it's a good concept. I just think security is, security is my issue. So that was the only one I had, Mr. Chairman. You have
okay. Yeah, I just have a couple of questions, and if you would, if the applicant would come back up.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to say that I think a lot of things have been explained tonight, and I think a lot of things have been shared. Information that was not available to people that live in the area, as well as members of this board. I mean, I've heard things tonight that I'd not heard before. I'm not saying it's your fault. It may be, internal as far as not being informed well enough about what's going on. Mm-hmm. But I have a question. You're now located, you have sites where? Schools, where do you have schools now?
We just have one school in St. George, Utah.
In St. George, Utah. Mm-hmm. All right. I would personally like to see information be given to our sheriff. He could talk to the police department right there and find out what kind of issues they had in St. George's, Utah. And if there are any instances, we need to know about them, to be quite honest. The second question would be, some months ago, and I don't recall the time frame, but some months ago we had a young man, a young boy, that walked off from an incident where he and his father were down around the North End of Aurora, somewhere close by, and it was about 4 or 5 days before we found that young man. It was expensive to find him. Now, as you say, a lot of people won't walk off in the area where you're at in Sparta, but there are going to be some that are going to be adventurous,
sure, and
they're going to walk. Who's going to pay for those rescue operations? Do you pay for them? Does the county have to pay for them as far as?
I would say that. I mean, I can't speak for Paul. So, you want to answer that?
Well, that's why the department is there. Whether somebody broke into your home or anybody else's home or stole your car, I mean, those things happen. As far as the comment about every 15 minutes, if your child was entrusted to somebody halfway across the country, you better believe that you would want them to do their utmost to make sure that nothing happens to your child. And that is my responsibility. These are things that I set up, for them. Do I really believe that, and this is what I talked to about our head of security about, do I honestly believe that one of those kids is, I don't. I have more fear of somebody else coming in than I do of anything happening.
And a lot of the things that we set up are for us. I mean, I was speaking with some security contractors over the last 3 days, and my comment to them was, this is all for this is a whole lot of money for a what if. But guess what? Like Paul just said, we look at what we do as being a good steward. Because I know, I mean, I have 3 kids. If I'm going to send my kid off to a program to get help, I expect them to have everything. I expect them to treat my child like if it were their own, and I also expect them to their safety and welfare be number one. And considering that we have locks on the doors, we have cameras in all over the place. We're still doing 15-minute bed checks, and if that employee doesn't do a 15-minute bed check and they don't turn the sheet in to me in the next day, they're going to lose their job. It's very important to us. Those checks are very important to us. It's not something that I'm just, hey, go check on them. No, it's called due diligence. It's called being a good steward, because we're not doing this just. This isn't a money thing. This isn't, this is a ministry for us. It's not a business.
Right. In the beginning, and I think it was a response to a question asked by Mr. Underwood, you were talking about the type of students or type of young people that would come into this program. And one was the fact that they had low esteem and couldn't get along with their parents or couldn't get along with a family member. I did not hear you mention during that response that one was that were kids that had been on drugs, marijuana. But I did hear you say later that this is a program that you do provide there at this particular facility, or you will provide at this particular facility. Why did you leave that out in the beginning?
Probably nervousness. We take kids that once you're in the industry, the cycle is it starts with the lie that they believe. You know, nobody cares, nobody wants me, whatever it may be. That then goes to hurt. And what happens when people hurt? What happens when a man hurts? A man gets angry. Okay, what happens when a woman hurts? You know, so that's what leads to the next thing, and a lot of times that's drugs. You know, why do we have alcoholics? Why do we have people that are hooked on drugs? I mean, there's a lot of our society that is messed up because of that. And if you look at where a lot of these people come from that get hooked on substance abuse, it's because they have stuff that they haven't dealt with in their past. And that's the cycle that we want to break. So absolutely we have kids that experiment with drugs, that smoked marijuana for a long, long time. You know, if let's say it's a 16-year-old and they're enrolled, you know, why are you here is one of the first questions I'll ask them. Well, I smoked every day for 3 months. Okay, do you understand why you're here? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, but it's that very thing that we want to change and head off. It's not just the fact that, you know, you do drugs. I mean, that's the secondary issue.
And follow up to that, you acknowledge now that there are young people that are connected to drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any young people in your program now that are connected to gangs?
No. That's a different. That's a completely different type of program. Yeah, not at all. Our kids aren't violent. You know, the extent of the violence that a kid would have, we actually had one student who actually attacked his father-in-law and punched him, knocked him out. He had a history of being very angry in the home. He came to ALA, and he's been at home and he's been successful. In fact, I've been talking to him today via text. We've got kids that, you know, they'll just shut down and isolate. We don't take kids that we are not prepared to treat properly. And again, that's the stewardship part. I mean, we turned down 3 applicants last month because of one, repetitive suicides, one was severe bipolar disorder, another one was just really, really angry and just a lot of violence. We won't take that. We got to look at our academy as being a culture and also a community. You know, so we got to be very careful of who we bring in because we want to maintain that. Now, part of our job as staff is to maintain that, you know, with the systems that we have in place, whether it be sticking very, very strictly to the schedule because they need the structure, or you know, anything. I mean, it's very important that we keep that culture because I will tell you, and I've seen this from experience, that one kid can come in and completely change a group. And so it's up to the student leadership and the staff to make sure that we're on that right away. You know, it's not a perfect scenario. It's not a perfect world. We're always going to have, you know, something, whether it be a kid come in thinking that he can, you know, destroy the academy, or a kid that come in and completely shut down and not engage. You know, that's just a part of the work that we do. But it's no different than what's in the public schools. That's the thing. It's no different at all.
Okay. Go ahead. Ask the question.
Have you ever heard the HEAL report or HEAL special report?
Yes.
What's that say to you?
Are you talking about Heal Online?
I'm talking about HEAL special report, Abundant Life Academy's enrollment agreement review,
Yes.
and a judge's order that says you should be closed.
Yes.
What's that all about?
That is a young lady that did not go to Abundant Life Academy. She was put in a program, I believe, at the age of 16. She suffers from, and I'm going to tell you the whole story here to give you the whole picture.
Okay, give me the Reader's Digest version because I can read the story.
Okay, well, but you're reading what she's writing, right?
I'm not sure who's the author. I'm just asking you.
Okay, so she is very adamant against programs. She was put in a program as a teen. Her mission in life after that was to basically attack all programs. Our previous owner attacked her, and then they got into a blog war, basically, and that's where Heal Online came from. I mean, that stuff's been up for 4 or 5 years.
I'd say 3 because it says the judge's report in 2009 that you
Okay.
should be closed. You want me to find it again?
No, I don't know. We've never were closed. I'm not sure what judge she's talking about. This is also a young lady that is very, well, I'm not going to speak negatively of her, but she's not exactly healthy.
Okay.
We've done a lot of research into her. We have, and we're not gonna attack her. We're not gonna, we know what the truth is. We know what we do for families. We know what we do for kids. We're not doing this to make money. It's a ministry, and whether you're Chevy, whether you're American Express, or whatever company you are, there's always going to be somebody out there that has something to say about you. Heal Online it's been out there, and we're not going to get in a power struggle with her based on an opinion.
Okay. Well, being on the Board of Supervisors, there's never been a case where anyone has said anything bad about us, so I wouldn't understand that at all. I just happened to find that. I thought I would ask you. It says a couple of things about abuse.
Yep.
This was the first time I looked at it. I didn't see it before then, but that's all I want to ask. Thank you.
We actually had an employee, a potential employee, come in yesterday and ask me the same question. So it comes up quite a bit, but our response is always going to be the same. Is like, 1, we don't know her. 2, she's obviously has some issues with programs, and then once our previous owner started attacking her because he wasn't exactly, he attacked her, and so she made it her mission to attack back.
We're good. Okay.
How long have you owned it, or your company owned it?
September of last year.
September of 11? Mr. Seeley, we weren't bypassing you. This is in your district.
Mr. Underwood has still one more question.
Mr. Underwood, you have another question?
Can you tell me how many students have come through the Abundant Life Academy, total number that's come through the academy?
I've only been there 2 years. It's been around for 10. Our average census is about 45 to 50, and it's an open enrollment,
right,
so it's
Right.
it's quite a few. I would say, I don't
Well,
know
the number
if
of kids you serviced over the 10-year period. That's why I think it's important that you give me some numbers of how many kids have been successful.
right.
Because if you've been doing this for 10 years, you should give me some kind of hard data that I can sink my teeth into.
Right.
Right now, just hearing your opinion.
Yeah, go ahead.
And
Any of these programs, I'm involved with other ones.
Excuse me?
You Turn for Christ is one. There's several of them around the country.
But I'm only talking about ALA right now.
I understand. I'm just trying to explain to you. There is no hard data. To get hard data that's acceptable to somebody would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to do.
Yeah, his numbers. Yeah, I mean, you ought to have. Why would also going to? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Seeley?
It's 5 different notes up here. It's not one lady. Here's that one lady. Here's the next one. Here's the next one.
I guess I've got business questions more than anything. When do you all want to start?
We would love to start the 3rd week of September.
And if you couldn't, what's the fallback plan?
Well, we stay where we are, and I mean, if it's a pushback, we'll push it back. But I mean, if this doesn't happen, we stay where we are.
Because I'm hearing questions, and I'm just trying to figure out how we resolve those questions and still keep a potential business here if it's possible?
Honestly, I believe it's, and I'm going to use this word, and I don't mean it in the wrong way, but it's a lack of knowing who we are. And, you know, what was it, last month we had a bunch of people come out, local pastors, we did a barbecue. It's just knowing the program. I mean, knowing the type of kids that come in. I mean, I understand the question about the data, but you know, I can keep track of a kid for so long after he graduates.
We're just talking about your numbers coming out of your academy. How many, are you talking 50 a year that come in, that graduate, or 100 a year? I mean, we're looking for your numbers, not what happens to them after they leave, but what happens to them from the day they come to your door to the day they walk out your door. How many walk out, and what's their success rate through your program?
Yeah, we graduate about 5 a month. Well, no, that's not true. We bring in 5 a month on average. We graduate 2 to 3 a month on average. And those are actual graduations, whether it be if they're 17 and they're a senior and they finish high school, they graduate high school. If they are 16 or 15 and they finish the program, they graduate the program. So, yeah, we're averaging, I would say, 2 graduations a month. Last month we graduated 4.
Right. Yeah, and the other numbers we're looking for are total success rate. How many kids actually enter the door, are unable to finish, and get sent home? Are there, how many of those take place in the course of a year?
In a year, I would say 85 to 90% that walk through the door end up finishing and going home.
So you're talking 3, 36, 40 kids a year that actually finish?
Yeah.
And so 2 or 3 kids a year go home?
Mm-hmm.
And don't
2 or 3
finish?
kids a year.
A year go
Yeah,
home.
yeah, because it's what I spoke to earlier. You'll have a parent that will actually pull them out of the program. Or once a kid turns 18, they can actually walk. You know, they're legally an adult and they can walk out. And so there are some kids that walk out that they don't want to finish. In fact, we had a young woman who walked out 6 weeks before graduation.
Mr. Hamrick, but those are the numbers that I'm asking you for based on your cumulative numbers.
Mm-hmm.
How many students graduate? How many students go back home? How many students just simply leave? I mean, to me, those are just basic tracking numbers that I would want. I mean, just coming before the board and asking us to make a decision, but again, without any numbers, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
And I just can't do that.
Mr. Underwood runs academies. That's probably why
Okay.
he
I work with
knows
at-risk
all this.
kids every day,
Okay.
and you ask me the success rate, I can tell you success rate. I can tell you how quickly accumulate credits. I mean, I've got 5,000 kids across the country.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I just need some data to help me help you.
Right, and we do not have a system in place that tracks that say, okay, starting 2 years ago, these are the statistics. We don't. I mean, not that I'm aware of, anyways.
Don't you think that would be helpful for you?
Absolutely.
To be able to articulate how many kids come into your program?
Absolutely.
The length of time it takes them to complete?
Absolutely.
And
Well-
if I may, I guess the concern that I have, or one of the concerns that I have, you know, senior citizens all over this country, not just in Caroline County, senior citizens are at risk. Mm-hmm. And they feel very, very uncomfortable about programs that bring into the community people that they don't know, mm-hmm. and who have issues that they don't know.
Sure.
My mom is 89 years old. Mm-hmm. She lives by herself. I could not support this if it were next door to her house.
Okay.
And I have a real concern about it. Not that I think it's bad. I don't think it's bad. I think it probably provides some kinds of services that are greatly needed. Mm-hmm. But like Mr. Thomas says, the location. Mm-hmm. And these folks who live in this area are senior citizens. They're older. And I just can't see putting them through that kind of agony. And it may not be a problem, but
mm-hmm.
they don't know that.
Right.
So,
and I appreciate that, but the irony is the program that we're actually running and teaching our kids is to prevent that type of fear, because we are putting a emotionally mature adult kids, soon to be adults, back out into the community, much like what you're trying to do with your academies. I mean, it's got to start somewhere. I understand that senior citizens would be in fear. However, I guarantee that if we were able to take a group of our kids to one of their houses and clean it up, stack, chop wood, whatever, they'd fall in love with every single one of them, because it's those type of kids. They're kids that come from, they have hurts and they come from broken families, but the kids that come through our door aren't kids that, we don't take the kids that are going to freak out, go out and commit the crimes. We just don't. So what we're doing is actually perpetuating the opposite of what you're saying. Is we want to put out into society people that actually add value as opposed to take away. And so I appreciate what you're saying, but it's like if we do what we're supposed to be doing and we run it well, which we do, and we get the families involved and we restore families, and we don't have broken families, but we have restored families, then that fear level should go down.
Mr. Steele, were you through with your questions? We seem to hijack your...
No, and that's fine. In the security area, you don't have recommendations back yet from anybody that you've talked to about what other security precautions you could actually place on the property. Is that true? I mean, you said you've talked to some security people this week.
Oh, we've talked to 3 actual vendors in terms of security cameras, access control, and we're just waiting to choose one. So we've actually talked to 3 of them. We have plans in place, cameras placed. I mean, not physically, but on a blueprint.
Paper.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Any other physical security measures that would be going up other than cameras on the property that you've looked at?
One of the main things is that we're going to have the gate. It's going to be an electric gate with the call button, video, probably video eventually. Again, like Paul said, we're more concerned about the people coming in than the people leaving.
And I guess everybody that's been here are more concerned about the people inside going
Right.
out than the other way around.
Right.
And that's why I'm asking, because there really isn't a fence line on this at all.
Well, there is well, I guess it depends on where out on the property, but not like a barbed wire fence, like a prison fence. No, there's not.
I don't per se, but I mean any fencing at all, nothing that you could actually delineate or know that anybody's crossed.
Probably not. I mean, we've got the lake back there. I mean, I guess, that.
Well, if there's more information, I'm willing to see if we can get more info.
As I said earlier, when
I'll make a motion to.
I think that one of the problems we've had tonight, to be honest with you, and I think one of the problems we've had with this issue, with this particular special exception, is the fact that there was not enough communication with the people that are going to be impacted, whether you're worried about them coming into your property or they worried about your students going onto their property. Mm-hmm. There should have been communication, more communication with those people, and I'm assuming there were none. From what I'm hearing tonight, from the people that live in that area, they've indicated things that they knew nothing about. But the same way with the sheriff. I just believe that, I understand you've hired your own security person, but I just believe it would have been prudent on your part to have at least talk to the sheriff and get thoughts from him, because he's been the sheriff in this county for 12 years, 8 years, 12 years, somewhere like that, so he knows the whole county, and he knows the people in the county. So it would have been much better, I think, for you to have sat down and had a conversation with all the people that are impacted and affected by this particular project. I just think that's a problem.
I'll make a motion.
That matters not to me. You do what you want. Because I still think that more data may help us at this point. And any motion now just kills us for a year. Correct?
yes, a failure will kill us for a year. From coming back, that is absolutely correct. A no vote would kill it for a year. He could come back in 12 months.
You can go to a different site, though.
He could go to a different site.
You can go to a different site at any time you want.
I don't know of any place in Caroline County, to be honest with you, that has the amenities and that has the buildings that he would need
Yeah, this site
anywhere
is,
else in the county. I mean,
yeah,
it's
this
just
site
not-
is
it's not
perfect
available.
for-
It's not there.
there's a reason we chose this site.
Right.
It's,
So I think
yeah.
what you're doing is saying,
yeah.
it's not Caroline County at this point.
Because I've promised what I was going to do already, so I'm willing to let you make the motion. It's your district. I wish to follow protocol, but if you don't want to do that, I'll be happy to make a motion.
Be my guest.
I make a motion to deny special exception 07-2012.
Is there a second?
Second?
Motion made by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Underwood, that we deny special exception 07-2012. Discussion on the motion.
Yes.
Mr. Black?
I think I know how the vote's going to go here, but I think we really need to look at the big picture, and I have a feeling this vote, I know this vote's not going to turn out well for you, and I apologize for that, because I think in the big picture, you have to look at if something is better for a community, and I was really thoroughly convinced by Mr. Branding the other day. I thought you had a great facility. I think you would be a benefit, the community service, so forth, for the county. So I am not going to reject it. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor?
I think you have a great facility, but I cannot guarantee these people that they're not in danger. I can't do that. And just to approve something to make a few dollars for the county and allow the senior citizens to live in fear, I can't do that.
Any other?
If you want,
Mr. Thomas?
Again, to be clear, I asked Mr. Seeley, it was his district. I give him the privilege of saying whatever, and he, in turn, asked me if I'd make a motion, and I made the motion. Gentlemen, again, I think it's a great project. I think it's a wonderful concept. I'm sorry, to me, it's in the wrong location, and, you know, Mrs. Rinaldi was right. I've talked to quite a few people there at church who have those same fears, and nothing that was said here alleviated those fears. So, I'm sorry. I call a question, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All in favor, vote by saying aye, and this is the motion to deny.
Correct.
Vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay.
And the motion is carried.
Division, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Black, how do you vote?
Nay.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
Mr. Thomas?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye as well. Gentlemen, I would only encourage you, if you look at Caroline County further, and I trust you will, even if you look at this location further, I would encourage you to do differently than you did this time, to be quite honest. Communicate with the people that are going to be impacted by this particular facility. I just think it's something that's going to be imperative to you. Thank you. God bless. Thank you. All right, item number 7, unfinished business, special exception 01-2012, Bud's Towing. This is unfinished business. If you recall, we had a public hearing the last board meeting, and it was tabled. Mr. Thomas, I believe it's in his district. He wanted to look at it further. So we're back to vote on the special exception at this point.
Sure. If you're ready, Mr. Chairman, I spoke to Mr. Giles today. On previous instances, visited his sites around the county, and Mr. Giles basically told me that I should vote it up or down today, that no other conditions or considerations would be taken into account. So on that case, I would move that we deny special exception 01-2012.
Is there a second?
I second.
Motion made by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Taylor, that we deny special exception 01-2012, Bud's Towing. Is there discussion on the motion? All in favor of denying special exception 01-2012, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Division of the House, Mr. Black? How do you
Nay.
vote? Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
Mr. Thomas?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye as well, and the motion is approved. Next item is number 8, continue the first reading of proposed ordinance of the Board of Supervisors electing to assume the power to consider petitions for the creation of community development authorities. Mr. Wilson?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of
Good
the
evening.
board. This is the continuation of the first reading for the board to assume the power of being able to receive and consider CDA applications. We do have an expert in the field of CDA financing, Mr. John Markowitz, with us this evening. He's Vice President of Stifel, Nicholas and Company in Richmond. And before he comes up to answer any questions the board members may have in regard to this, I would review briefly what this is about. The CDA ordinance empowers the board to receive applications. This particular ordinance is not attached to any particular project. This is merely an instrument for the board to have financing for important projects in the county. The board will have control of the project's content. In the future, when you do finally have, if you do have a company that or a project requires a CDA, you have the power to shape its final content or reject it. You do not have to have a project you don't want. And finally, the beauty of the CDA instrument is that the board, if they do accept a project that's funded by CDA, by law, is not able to pay the debt. You will never be indebted because of a CDA project, should it ever not do what it's advertised to do. So we do have Mr. John Markowitz with us. I'll ask him to come up and answer any questions.
Mr. Wilson, before we bring Mr. Markowitz up, let's see if the board members have any questions of you.
Yes, sir.
As to the process. He certainly will explain in detail, but are there any questions among the board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Underwood.
at our previous reading, I thought we had questions that we were going to have answered at the second reading, and I think there were a list of
That is what this
And
is. This is what we have Mr. Markowitz here for, in case you had any technical questions regarding CDA.
But we gave you the questions. I thought
We
discussed-
actually received no questions from the board that I know of, sir.
My suggestion is you go pull the DVD from the last time we did this, because I had a number of questions, and I can start down them now. And some of them had to do with real estate tax and how it got paid to the CDA and how long that went on before the trade-off actually took place. There was some debate about whether the real estate tax was completely gone from the county or partially gone from the county for the CDA. Remember that?
Mr. Markowitz is here to answer those kind of questions for you.
But I mean, we had a laundry list of, I mean, everybody up here had a question. We spent a long time on this last time.
All right, let me, if you would, at this point, I'm going to allow your guest this evening to come and to share in general, if you'd like, some more information. I would then ask that you do go back and look at the previous video and determine what the questions were that were asked by the various board members, or have someone do that. And then have Mr. Markowitz to respond in writing to those particular questions. So there's no question, I mean, as to what we expect. Okay?
Mr. Chair, my apologies. I did think that the board was going to query our county's attorney. That's why I thought we left that. But apparently I was wrong, so we'll go and do that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's the way we're, if Mr. Markowitz has any general information he wants to share further than what he did the last time, we're certainly glad to hear it. But then, Mr. Wilson, I do want you to go back, or have someone go back and look at the tape during that segment of the board meeting and find out what the questions were, and have someone answer in writing.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Markowitz, and I work at Stifel Nicholas. And as Gary said, we are the largest underwriter of land-secured bonds in the country, and we specialize in CDA bonds. Was not aware of any questions prepared before, but happy to look at those whenever I see those, and we can respond in writing to you. Very briefly, when my colleague and I were here back in June for the first reading, we talked about community development authorities and how they're used as economic development tools to attract an economic development prospect, an economic development project to preserve and strengthen the county's tax base, create jobs, etc. What it does very generally is shifts the burden to pay for infrastructure onto the private sector. And as Gary said, there is no liability to the county. The county is actually precluded from paying or prohibited from paying any CDA debt. That's in the statute. So we see a lot of interest with this as localities struggle with budgets, as states do, as the federal government does, coupled with a deteriorating infrastructure system and the need for economic development projects and prospects. So there's 21 localities, 21 CDAs have issued bonds in Virginia, and these are done all over the country. So I'm happy to answer questions. As I understand it, the ordinance tonight is simply to give the county the ability to consider CDAs for specific projects. It's not committing to any project specifically. So happy to answer any questions. Or I'm happy to respond later in writing.
Okay, I do.
That was the basis of the question.
Mr. Underwood, you have?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
I think that we will, Mr. Wilson will go back and determine what those questions were that were addressed at the last board meeting. And was it the last board meeting or the meeting in June?
June.
It wasn't the last because you weren't here, Mr. Underwood.
I was here in June.
So, right. So it must have been the first meeting in,
Well, I have,
first meeting in
I
June.
have
July.
the June one, and I have my questions still here. I don't remember any answers to June, but I'll check and see where it was again.
Check June and July, Gary. It would have more than likely been the last meeting.
June they did the presentation, June 12th.
Right.
And
So that's probably the meeting we're talking about, gentlemen?
I don't see a CDA in July.
Yeah,
I don't see one for the first meeting in July.
We don't have one. No, two, we had
We
two
had,
in
we had
July.
two in July.
Yeah, July.
I don't see anything for the
June
July
12th
31st
meeting,
one.
Mr. Wilson. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming out. Okay. Next item is informational calendar items. There's a proposed meeting.
There is? We have to have it? Closed session.
You got a closed meeting? You have?
Personnel?
No.
it's not.
Litigation?
No.
Happiness for everybody?
I don't think so, but anyway.
Oh.
It may be happiness for some people. All right, Mr. Cully.
We provided a status of capital projects. If you have any questions about those, we try to answer them if we can. Mr. Chairman, we also have a letter. In the past, to have an agricultural disaster declaration, the Board of Supervisors had to adopt a resolution. They've streamlined that process, so we've already asked the extension agent to move forward on that. This is just for information that it is moving forward because, as you can imagine, with the type of drought we've had, even though with the amount of rain we've had, it didn't fall real good for the corn crop. So we've had some damage to crops, and so that's moving forward, but it doesn't require a vote. And then we do have a calendar in there. It shows Mr. Taylor's meetings at the end of the month for his community meetings on that calendar. So those are the three things we included for your information this time.
All right. Mr. Thomas, we'll go into closed meeting. Or first of all, closing board comments. Mr. Black?
I have none.
Mr. Taylor?
I have none.
Mr. Underwood?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seeley?
I have none.
Mr. Thomas?
I really don't have any. I just want to make sure
Thank
I understand from Mr. Seeley that we did have a discussion on the last public hearing. I wasn't trying to usurp your authority, but you said go ahead and make a motion, and I made a motion. Oh, so.
All
that
right,
was-
and I have no closing board comments either. Go ahead, Mr.
All
Thomas.
right, for closed meeting, I move that this board convene in closed meeting pursuant to Section 2.2-3711.3 of the Code of Virginia for discussion regarding the consideration of the disposition of real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the county.
Is there a second?
I second.
Motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Taylor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion is carried. The board will now enter into, is there a second to that?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Black, that we come out of closed meeting. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. Mr. Black, do you certify we only discussed in closed session what we went into closed session to talk about?
I so certify.
Mr. Taylor?
I so certify.
Mr. Underwood?
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley?
I so certify.
Mr. Thomas?
I was told by council not to say anything, so I'm not going to say anything for the rest of the meeting. I so certify.
And I so certify as well. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Yes, sir.
Everybody motioned and everybody second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion's approved.
That's for later. I think they'll